The morning mist still covered the plains of Udapow when Anakin Skywalker emerged from the main crater, carrying in his arms the separatist electromagnetic pulse device he had personally deactivated. His Jedi robes were torn and burned, but his eyes shone with unwavering determination. Behind him, thousands of battle droids lay inert, their red lights extinguished forever after the energy wave he himself had initiated by overloading the enemy weapons circuits. Obi-Wan Kenobi watched from above, alongside Commander Cody, with a mixture of pride and concern etched on his face. Ahsoka Tano ran down the rocky slope, her lightsaber still activated, her eyes wide as she realized the magnitude of what her master had achieved. The victory had come not only from his courage, but from the impossible choice he had made, using the Force itself to channel the device's lethal energy through his body, something no Jedi would dare attempt. That moment would forever mark the end of the Clone Wars. The following hours passed like a blur of urgent communications and contained celebrations. Mace Windu transmitted from the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, his stern expression softened by a slight nod of approval as he listened to Obi-Wan's report about Anakin's feat. The Jedi Council had convened in emergency session, and for the first time in 3 long years, they were discussing not war strategies, but the terms of an armistice. Yoda, seated in his chair with half-closed eyes, murmured thoughtfully as he processed the information arriving from all quadrants of the galaxy. The war that had devastated countless worlds was finally coming to an end, but the scars would remain for generations. Anakin remained silent during much of the return flight to Coruscant, his thoughts divided between the victory achieved and the personal cost he had almost paid. Ahsoka sat beside him on the transport ship, observing her master's hands that still trembled slightly, force burns marking his fingers as permanent reminders. She wanted to say something comforting, but words seemed inadequate in the face of the transformation she had witnessed in Anakin during that final battle. He was no longer just the impetuous knight she had known years ago, but something different, forged by the fire of impossible decisions. Obi-Wan approached and placed a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder, a simple gesture that carried decades of bond and mutual understanding. No words were exchanged between them, for both knew that some experiences transcended language. The galaxy was saved, but the price of salvation was engraved in Anakin Skywalker's soul. The halls of the Galactic Senate exploded in acclaim when Chancellor Palpatine officially announced the end of hostilities. Padme Amidala watched from Naboo's booth, her hands clasped over the belly that was beginning to show discreet signs of her secret pregnancy. She searched for Anakin with her gaze through the crowd of senators and dignitaries, finally finding him among the Jedi flanking the Chancellor. There was something different in his posture, a quietness she didn't completely recognize, as if the war had taken from him a portion of his impetuous youth. Bail Organa approached Padme, whispering comments about the political speeches that would certainly come in the following weeks, but she only listened partially. Her heart was with the man she loved, the hero who had saved the Republic, and with the children he didn't yet know she carried. Peace had finally arrived, and with it, the hope of a future they could build together, far from the shadows of war. But something in the Force disturbed her, a sensation of incompleteness, as if the story had not yet revealed all its chapters. 3 days after the victory at Udapow, the Jedi Council convened an extraordinary session that would echo through the Order's history. Anakin Skywalker stood in the center of the council chamber, surrounded by the holograms and physical presences of the galaxy's wisest masters. Mace Windu was the first to speak, his deep voice resonating through the ancient walls as he pronounced words that few Jedi had heard in their generation. The granting of the title of Master came not only for the singular feat at Udapow, but for the growth demonstrated over years of unimaginable trials. Yoda slowly shook his head, his ancient eyes fixed on Anakin with a depth that seemed to pierce through time. "Very young you still are," said the Grand Master, his characteristic syntax carrying prophetic weight. "But matured by war you have been. Master Skywalker you now are." For the first time in his life, Anakin felt he truly belonged, that the doubts and insecurities that had tormented him had been, if not resolved, at least acknowledged and validated. The ceremony was simple, devoid of the pomp that characterized similar events in peacetime. Obi-Wan stood beside his former Padawan, now his equal in title and responsibility, with a discreet smile that betrayed the immense pride he felt. Ahsoka watched from a corner of the chamber, her eyes filled with tears, with barely contained emotion as she witnessed her master's ascension. She knew this meant changes in her own training, but the joy she felt for Anakin surpassed any personal apprehension. When Mace Windu placed his hand on Anakin's shoulder and pronounced the final words of confirmation, a wave rippled through the Force, as if the galaxy itself recognized the importance of that moment. The Chosen One, prophesied to bring balance, now occupied a seat among the guardians of peace and justice. But in the shadows of Coruscant, in places the Jedi Temple's light did not reach, other forces watched and planned. For Dooku and General Grievous still breathed, and the war, though officially ended, had left embers that only awaited the right wind to transform again into devastating flames. The Supreme Chancellor's office was a study in controlled opulence, every detail carefully designed to impress and intimidate in equal measures. Anakin Skywalker crossed the ornate doors with confident steps, responding to the personal invitation Palpatine had sent through formal diplomatic channels. The Chancellor rose from his desk with a warm smile that illuminated his wrinkled face, his arms open in a gesture of welcome. Master Skywalker, he pronounced the title with deliberate emphasis. The hero who saved the Republic finally honors me with his presence. Anakin bowed his head respectfully, but something in Palpatine's effusiveness awakened an instinctive caution that his years on the council had begun to sharpen. Chancellor, I appreciate the invitation, but I must confess curiosity about your urgency. Anakin responded, maintaining his cordial but professional tone. Palpatine gestured toward the luxurious armchairs near the panoramic windows that offered a spectacular view of Coruscant. My young friend, in times like these, those with true power and vision must unite to shape the galaxy's future, said the Chancellor, his voice acquiring a conspiratorial tone that made Anakin's instincts sharpen even more. Palpatine circled Anakin like a predator assessing its prey, each word chosen with surgical precision to penetrate the young Jedi Master's psychological defenses. You have demonstrated capabilities that transcend the conventional limits of the Force, the Chancellor continued, channeling that energy through your own body, something not even the Council's oldest members would dare attempt. Anakin watched Palpatine with growing discomfort, recognizing the manipulation technique the Chancellor employed, exalting the ego while simultaneously creating division between him and his peers. The Council recognized my feat by granting me the title of Master, Anakin responded carefully, but it was a victory achieved by all Jedi, not just by me. Palpatine laughed softly, a sound that carried layers of unspoken meaning. Admirable modesty, but unnecessary here, my young friend, he said, approaching the windows and gesturing to the vastness of the planet city. The galaxy needs strong leaders, not committees that deliberate endlessly while threats grow in the shadows. The mention of threats made Anakin frown, for he himself had argued in the Council about the need for more decisive action against Dooku and Grievous. In the days that followed, Anakin plunged into his training with renewed intensity, determined to prove that the Council's trust was not misplaced. Ahsoka faithfully accompanied him, her own abilities growing exponentially under the tutelage of a master who now combined raw power with matured wisdom. In the temple's training hall, they practiced combat sequences that challenged the limits of what was considered possible. Your connection with the Force is stronger, Ahsoka observed one morning, as she blocked a series of strikes Anakin executed with millimetric precision. It's as if something unlocked in Udapow. Anakin deactivated his saber, considering his Padawan's words seriously. I think I finally stopped fighting myself, he responded. For years, I felt I needed to choose between power and control, but now I realize they're complementary, not opposite. Obi-Wan watched from a corner of the hall, his own saber hanging on his belt, a discreet smile of pride crossing his face. He approached both of them, placing a hand on Anakin and Ahsoka's shoulders simultaneously. You two represent the Order's future, he said, his voice carrying rare emotion. A new generation that combines the wisdom of ancient traditions with the courage to evolve beyond them. Ahsoka looked between her master and her master's Grand Master, feeling the deep bond that connected them. A legacy of mentorship and fraternal love that now extended to her as well. The rescue ship cut through Coruscant's turbulent atmosphere, carrying in its interior a prisoner who would change the galaxy's destiny. Dooku remained contained by force-suppressing shackles, his aristocratic face marked by bruises and the humiliation of defeat. Anakin Skywalker observed the prisoner with an impassive expression, remembering the crucial moments aboard General Grievous' ship when Palpatine had ordered the Count's summary execution. Kill him now." The Chancellor's words echoed in his memory, but Anakin had refused, binding Dooku's wrists and deactivating his saber while Obi-Wan lay unconscious beside him. That choice, made in a moment of absolute clarity, represented everything Anakin had learned about justice versus vengeance. Ahsoka piloted the ship expertly, occasionally casting glances at her master through the cockpit, proud of the decision he had made under extreme pressure. But something disturbed Anakin, a dissonance in the Chancellor's reaction when he announced his decision to spare Dooku, a flash of fury that the experienced politician couldn't completely hide before recomposing his mask of understanding. The council chamber was in full session when Anakin presented his detailed report about Chancellor Palpatine's rescue. Mace Windu listened attentively to every word, his penetrating eyes not missing any nuance of Anakin's narrative. "The Chancellor ordered the execution of a disarmed prisoner?" Windu questioned, his deep voice carrying intertwined incredulity and concern. Anakin nodded, choosing his words carefully. He argued that Dooku was too dangerous to be kept alive, that execution was necessary, Anakin explained. "But it didn't seem like justice to me, it seemed like vengeance, and I refused to follow the order." Yoda closed his eyes, processing the implications of the account with the wisdom of his 800 years. "Disturbing, this is," murmured the Grand Master, his inverted syntax carrying dark weight. "Much interest in Dooku's fate, the Chancellor has." Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon exchanged meaningful looks, both recognizing the disturbing patterns that were emerging. "Master Skywalker demonstrated extraordinary wisdom," declared Plo Koon, his modulated voice echoing approval. "Capturing Dooku alive offers us opportunities his death would deny, including information about the separatist leadership that remains at large." Obi-Wan added with quiet conviction. Anakin acted as a true Jedi, placing principles above political convenience. The council voted unanimously to approve Anakin's actions, but the shadow of Palpatine's interference hung over all of them like a storm cloud forming on the horizon. The weeks that followed brought profound changes in Anakin's personal life that contrasted dramatically with the growing political tensions. Padme had revealed her pregnancy on a quiet night in her apartment, her hands guiding Anakin's to feel the subtle movement of life within her. "I'm pregnant, Ani," she had whispered, tears of joy shining in her eyes. Anakin had embraced her tightly, but something was different this time, something fundamental that he took time to recognize. There were no nightmares, no visions of death and loss that had tormented his dreams in other similar circumstances. His mind remained clear, centered, strengthened by months of deep meditation and the genuine acceptance he had found in the council. "Aren't you worried?" Padme had asked, finding his unusual calm strange. "I'm at peace," Anakin had responded with surprising honesty. "For the first time in my life, I feel I'm exactly where I should be, doing exactly what I should do." They had discussed revealing the marriage to the council, for Anakin felt that secrets were poison to the trust he had built, but they agreed to wait for the right moment. Obi-Wan certainly suspected, Anakin knew, but his former master respected his privacy while waiting for Anakin to trust him completely. Ahsoka, with her sharp perception, had also noticed subtle changes in her master, a lightness in his steps that wasn't present before, but she kept her observations to herself, happy simply to see him happy. In the depths of the Jedi Temple, in containment chambers designed to neutralize even the most powerful Force practitioners, Dooku remained under constant surveillance. Mace Windu and Ki-Adi-Mundi conducted the initial interrogations, their techniques refined over decades of experience extracting information in layers. The former Count resisted, his aristocratic arrogance serving as armor against their questions. But there were cracks in his facade that the Jedi Masters methodically exploited. "Why did Palpatine order your death?" Windu had asked during the third session, his voice cutting like a blade. Dooku had hesitated, and in that hesitation, Windu saw the seed of doubt and betrayal. "You're not a fool, Count," Windu had continued relentlessly. "You recognize when you've been discarded as a broken tool." Plo Koon had assumed a different role, offering not clemency, but the dignity of dying with the truth revealed instead of living as an abandoned pawn. "Sidious considered you disposable," Plo Koon had said softly, just as he considered all his other apprentices throughout the millennia. The name Sidious had made Dooku freeze, his eyes widening briefly before recomposing control. Yoda had entered the room then, his diminutive presence carrying weight that made the walls seem narrow. "Old friend," Yoda had said with infinite sadness, for Dooku had been his Padawan decades ago. "The darkness consumed you, but redemption still possible is." It was these words, pronounced by the one who had been his master, that finally broke Dooku's defenses. The confession came in a torrent, words Dooku had kept for years finally released in a final act of defiance against the one who had betrayed him. "Palpatine is my master," Dooku declared, his voice carrying poisonous bitterness. "He is Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who orchestrated this entire war from the beginning." The silence that followed was absolute, the weight of implications crushing any immediate response. Mace Windu leaned forward, his intense eyes fixed on Dooku. "Do you have proof?" Windu demanded, knowing that accusations against the Supreme Chancellor would require irrefutable evidence. Dooku laughed bitterly, a humorless sound that echoed through the cell's walls. "The proofs are in every move he made, every law he proposed, every power he accumulated," the former Count responded. "Examine his private offices, his communication records with separatist leaders, the patterns of his political manipulations." Ki-Adi-Mundi and Plo Koon exchanged alarmed looks, recognizing the veracity in Dooku's tone even through his bitterness. Yoda closed his eyes, extending his consciousness through the Force, seeking confirmation in the energy currents that flowed through the galaxy. "Truth he speaks," the Grand Master finally whispered, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Deceived we were. Under our very noses, the Sith Lord was." The revelation transformed everything, every political decision, every military maneuver, every moment of recent years reconfiguring under new sinister light. The Council convened in absolute emergency session, sealing the temple against any external communication while they processed the catastrophic implications of Dooku's revelation. Anakin listened with growing horror as the older masters reconstructed years of manipulation, each puzzle piece fitting with terrible precision. "The private meetings he scheduled with me?" Anakin murmured, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "He was trying to convert me, turn me away from you." Obi-Wan placed his hand on his shoulder, a gesture of silent support as his former Padawan confronted how close he had been to darkness. "But you resisted," Obi-Wan said firmly. "Your strength of character prevented Sidious's plans from completely materializing." Mace Windu was already formulating strategy, his training as a general surfacing in the face of crisis. "We need a careful plan," Windu declared. "We cannot simply accuse the Chancellor without adequate preparation. The risks are too immense." But before they could formulate any strategy, the communicators of all masters present began to sound simultaneously, a cacophony of alarms that portended disaster. Ki-Adi-Mundi was the first to check, his elongated face paling as he processed the information flowing through military channels. "It's impossible," he whispered, but the evidence was undeniable in the reports appearing on their holograms. Order 66 had been activated. The clones who for 3 years had fought side by side with the Jedi now turned against their generals with mechanical efficiency and lethal precision. Throughout the galaxy, on distant and nearby worlds, Jedi masters and knights fell under blaster volleys fired by soldiers who had been their brothers in arms. In the Coruscant temple, alarms began to sound as clone battalions marched through the gates, their orders clear and absolute. Anakin activated his saber instinctively, positioning himself defensively as the Council reacted with the discipline of experienced warriors. "How did he know?" Obi-Wan shouted above the growing chaos, but the answer was obvious and terrible. Palpatine had discovered that Dooku was in Jedi custody and had executed his contingency plan before they could act against him. Yoda leaped from his chair, his diminutive but lethal saber already in hand, his ancient eyes shining with fierce determination. "Protect the temple, we must," the Grand Master ordered, his voice cutting through the panic. "But evacuation of the younglings, priority is." Mace Windu was already coordinating the defense through communicators, his tactical mind processing scenarios even as he blocked blaster volleys penetrating through the council chamber's windows. Anakin looked at Ahsoka, who had run to the chamber at the first sign of alarm, his eyes meeting hers in silent understanding. They would fight, defend those who couldn't defend themselves. But something fundamental had broken in the galaxy's order, and the cost of repair would be measured in blood and sacrifice beyond any imagination. The flames consumed entire sections of the Jedi Temple as the clones advanced with implacable military precision, their coordinated formations transforming sacred corridors into war zones. Mace Windu blocked blaster volleys with economical movements, his mind processing the tactical situation even as his heart bled for the betrayal he witnessed. Mundi shouted above the roar of explosions, his voice carrying desperate urgency as he protected a group of Padawans. Obi-Wan was already on communicators, establishing contact with Bail Organa and other loyal senators. "Senator, the temple is under attack by the clones," Obi-Wan transmitted rapidly. "Palpatine executed some kind of contingency order. We need the Senate Guard immediately." Bail's response was instantaneous, his voice carrying intertwined horror and determination. Plo Koon coordinated the defense of the eastern perimeter, his saber cutting through droids that joined the clones in the assault, and then he saw them, the unmistakable cyborg figure of General Grievous marching ahead of a complete legion of traitorous soldiers. Grievous advanced through the temple's main courtyard with his terrifying mechanical presence, his 4 stolen lightsabers spinning in deadly patterns that forced the Jedi defenders to retreat. Mace Windu murmured, observing the general, leaping from an upper balcony to intercept him before he reached the chambers where the most vulnerable younglings sheltered. The impact of their sabers created an energy explosion that made nearby clones stumble. Anakin watched from across the courtyard, divided between the duty to protect the temple and something deeper that pulsed through the Force. Ahsoka fought at his side, her dual sabers blocking volleys as she protected a group of initiates running toward evacuation transports. Anakin turned to Yoda and Mace Windu, who had temporarily disengaged from Grievous when Jedi reinforcements arrived to contain the general. "Master Yoda, Master Windu, I sense that my mission is not here," Anakin declared, his voice cutting through the battle noise. "I must go after Sidious, after Palpatine. He is the serpent's head." Windu shook his head vehemently, blocking a blaster volley before responding. "You don't have enough power to face a Sith Lord of his caliber alone, Skywalker," Windu argued with authority. "Sidious manipulated the entire galaxy for decades." Yoda struck his staff on the ground, his ears flattened in deep concern. "Reckless this would be," said the Grand Master, his inverted syntax carrying warning weight. "Destroyed you could be. Prepared to face such darkness. None of us is." Obi-Wan joined them, his face marked by soot but his eyes clear. "Anakin, listen to the council," he pleaded. But something had fundamentally changed in Anakin Skywalker since that day in Udapow. He looked at his masters and saw not authority figures to be blindly obeyed, but allies to be respected while following the path the Force illuminated. "I understand your concerns," Anakin said calmly, activating his lightsaber. "But the Chosen One is not just a title. It's a calling I feel in every fiber of my being. This is my mission to confront the darkness." Ahsoka stepped forward, her eyes shining with fierce loyalty. "Then I'll go with you, Master," she declared, but Anakin gently shook his head. "No, Snips, your strength is needed here," he responded, placing his hand on her shoulder. He looked at Obi-Wan, and between them passed a silent understanding. "May the Force be with you, my brother," Obi-Wan finally said. The roar of engines filled the air as the Senate Guard arrived in massive force, armored transports dumping loyal soldiers who joined the Jedi in defending the temple. Bail Organa personally led a contingent, his face transformed into a mask of determination. "For the true Republic," he shouted as his troops established defensive positions. Mon Mothma coordinated reinforcements through communicators, mobilizing loyal senators in a coordinated response Palpatine had not anticipated. The tide of battle began to change dramatically. Mace Windu seized the distraction to launch a devastating attack against Grievous, his violet saber cutting through two of the general's mechanical limbs. Plo Koon and Ki-Adi-Mundi pressed other flanks, their synchronized movements transforming them into an unstoppable force. Yoda leaped through the battlefield like a green lightning bolt, his diminutive saber taking down droids and disarming clones with surgical precision. Obi-Wan watched the sky where Anakin's interceptor disappeared toward the Senate district, a silent prayer on his lips. Palpatine's office was shrouded in shadows when Anakin burst through the doors, his saber already activated. Sidious stood by the windows observing the fires, a cruel smile curving his lips. "Ah, young Skywalker," Sidious turned slowly. "You finally realized your place is at my side." Anakin advanced with measured steps, rage channeled through discipline. "You manipulated the entire galaxy, created a war that killed trillions," Anakin declared, his voice resonating with authority. "But your reign ends now, Sidious." They collided in the center of the office with force that shattered the panoramic windows, blue and red dancing in deadly patterns. Sidious was fast, but Anakin was something the Sith Lord never anticipated. A warrior who combined raw power with absolute control. Each of Anakin's strikes carried unwavering conviction. Each block demonstrated perfect technique that made Sidious retreat step by step. "Impossible," Sidious hissed as Anakin pressed his attack. "You should be mine." Anakin didn't respond with words, for his blade spoke more eloquently. The Sith Lord tried to use tricks, illusions through the Force, but Anakin's mind remained crystalline. With a final and devastating movement, Anakin cut through Sidious's defenses and tore the saber from his hands, the crimson blade flying through the room. Sidious staggered backward, his hands rising in preparation for his last resort. Force lightning exploded from his twisted fingers, blue-white energy that could char flesh. "If I cannot have you, I will destroy you," the Sith Lord roared, pouring decades of accumulated power. Anakin planted his feet, his saber raised in channel, using the technique he had developed in Udapow. Sidious's energy hit him with devastating force, but Anakin absorbed it through the Force, letting it flow through him. His hands burned, but he advanced step by step through the storm. Sidious intensified the attack, desperation mixed with fury. The Sith Lord began to burn, his own energy turning against him as the lightning intensified, consuming him from within. Anakin deactivated his saber with trembling hands, looking at the burns marking his arms. He activated his communicator. "Master Windu, Sidious is dead." His voice came out hoarse but firm. The response came after a brief pause. Padme Amidala watched from her apartment windows until she saw the familiar interceptor landing. Anakin emerged staggering, but alive. She ran to meet him, tears running as she embraced him. Anakin held her as if she were the only real thing. "It's over, Padme, truly over," he murmured. "And now we can finally start living." Ahsoka eventually became a knight, with Anakin present at her ceremony, proud of the strong woman she had become. Peace wasn't perfect, for deep scars remained, but it was genuine, built on truth instead of lies, and sustained by the sacrifice of those who chose the light even when darkness seemed invincible.